Hello, this is Brendan Ferguson, designer and writer.
And Dave Grossman, similar.
And Dave Bogan, art director.
And Kim Lyons, environment artist.
And Emily Morganti, marketing.
So this is episode number 4, Abe Lincoln Must Die. Begins with yet again more clever puzzle exposition, because later we'll need to use the bug on the phone. So we said, aha! Well, a little prank call to begin this episode.
Possession is the gift that keeps on giving.
I think this is one of my favorite openings, actually, because
I love it.
The music, it doesn't sound like Sam and Max when it first starts off. It sounds like The Exorcist or something. And the great bug voice again.
Yes.
And then it makes that switch, and the music shifts, and they go back into their sticky dialogue. It worked out really well.
It's also the first one that started with a little clip and then went into the credits and then landed in a brand new place, which I think was a change a lot of people were ready for after the first 3 episodes starting pretty much the same way.
Mandated group hugs before, during, and after all major sporting events.
So for this episode, we brought on an outstanding contract writer called Chuck Jordan. Not
his real name. Chuck is an old friend from LucasArts who, if I remember correctly, did a lot of the writing on Monkey Island 3.
That's true.
Very funny, and a lot of the writing on this episode.
Good old Chuck. And this was our break from the regular rainbow color shift in our opening title sequence. Since this episode is going to have a lot to do with the presidency, we decided to go with the old red, white, and blue titles here.
Oh, that's the connection.
Genius. By the way, the core idea behind this episode, the whole thing about the giant statue of Abe Lincoln coming to life, is one of those tiny bits of magic that comes out of Steve Purcell's brain at the meeting that we usually have over dinner right at the beginning of each episode. He just says one thing, and the entire episode becomes constructed around it.
One thing I forgot to mention about the opening titles is that we wanted to make each one unique and different, but obviously time and budget allowed us, or forced us to go in certain paths. One was the color, and the second thing is the animation that Sam and Max play at the end of each title sequence. They do something a little different each time, which is always fun to come up with. I think this is my other favorite voice, I have to say. Again, behind the bug. But this guy's great.
This is Doug Boyd. He also does other voices for Sam Max, including, for example, the announcer, the television announcer, in various episodes. He's also a favorite from the Bone series as Smiley.
Especially like how he does that spinny thing with his eyes.
I thought one thing we wanted to make a president that had this kind of puppet look to him, and he just had that great howdy doody quality. And then for his voice, naturally we wanted to remind people of some of the favorite presidents of the last few years of the United States, but he has a bit of Bush and a bit of Clinton in him, but it carves out its own style.
There's a little Carter in there, too.
Yeah, just a touch.
That's it. You two are coming with me.
This Oval Office environment that you built, Kim.
Yes.
I got to write all of the dialogue lines for looking at the various little objects in the room at the very last minute. I think I had about 2 hours to get it done. And I was just impressed with how chock full it was of inspirational material. There's about 30 different things you can put
By
on
impressed,
it.
you mean steamed. And
Those 20-hour workdays finally come in. But that's the fun part, actually. I mean, these environments are just supposed to be filled with just visual jokes, too. I mean, whatever we can do, actually.
Did we ever get a close-up of the Weasel Scout badges?
I don't know. See, we build it, and then it just goes out into the world like we're kids. I don't...
They might in the war song. There's a lot of stuff you get to see in them.
And maybe we'll just have to go back to the president's office one day. In the Weasel Scout episode.
I would love that.
This is so disturbing.
This is a good example of a scene where as we're getting near the end of the game and I'm play testing things, I know that I want angels to be singing there, but I don't hear them because the sound pass is usually right near the end. And so that scene looks really bad without any angel sounds playing in the game. So it ends up coming out.
It's really hard for the chore artists and even for me directing them to know how far to take a scene when we're not exactly sure how far the music guys are going to come in, and or are they going to have enough time to treat every scene in the game. But that one worked out really nicely.
That was fun. Okay, now I didn't catch all that. What did he say?
The little translation puzzle was actually pretty neat. We're always looking for interesting new ways to make puzzles using dialogue. That was a fun one.
Yeah, I like that puzzle a lot. I love any puzzle where even as you're just completely failing, it's just still amusing.
I'll never get tired of this scene.
That was a little callback to the opening of Sam Max Hit the Road.
What, silly me? I thought hypnotizee, not hypnotizer.
What?
Yes.
This was one where, as the game was coming together, we started, playing through it, and every time we got to this part, people would just flock around to watch it again. We probably played through it 15 times in the last week before the game shipped.
What have you done? He was like that when we got here.
Sam did it.
So these two numbskulls managed to off the president.
I love how Max just turns on Sam any chance he gets. He's so selfish.
Union address were even lower than reruns of mid.
Yeah, I was reading the script when Chuck sent it in and laughing my head off. Just, they kept saying, Sam did it, Sam did it, Sam did it. I think there was a few more in the original pass, but cut it down just a little bit.
As close as Sam and Max are to each other, I wonder which one of the two would jump in front of the other to catch a bullet. Maybe none of them.
Yeah, I was going to say,
actually.
I don't know if either one.
Sam would probably just laugh, and Max would also laugh.
Sam would take a bullet for it.
Hey.
I think if there was any one of the two, it would be Sam.
This little shot wasn't even going to be in there until Jake made us do it, basically by building the entire environment and just handing it to us on a platter.
People over the decapitated body of the president.
What do you think this fake body is made of? Can I keep it?
No time for that now, Max. We've got
The reason that was kind of
What's that noise?
made and put in there is because we got some focus testing back, and someone actually didn't recognize the giant Lincoln Memorial, which kind of astounded us.
Well, because the Lincoln Memorial doesn't have a hat.
Yeah, he doesn't
was
have
the
a
logic.
hat. That's true.
There's that.
I like the hat.
I insisted on the hat because I like the hat, frankly. I think it's very characteristic, but
It's very Lincoln.
I question that decision occasionally.
And it makes him even taller than he already is.
We actually managed to keep the role of Lincoln in this game a secret for a very long time, which was kind of amazing. We kind of marketed it as if they were just going to find out what was wrong with the president. And, it did finally get out, but it was kept secret from the public for much longer than I expected it to.
That never gets old either.
Hydraulic motors and robotic implants. Yes. Okay. I see. We're on it.
Wrong number?
That was the commissioner, Max. If this new
I like how there's kind of all of a sudden there's a second goal, the commissioner calls again.
This was one of those scenes where there was a lot of things we needed to explain by the end of the scene to make it very clear exactly what you had to do against Lincoln from here on in, and that you were going to have to run Max for president. I like that they picked Max only because Sam got to answer the phone.
It's only fair.
I don't know if you noticed, but there was an extra star on the U.S. flag on top of the White House, and that was to represent the soda poppers. The extra state put in there, West Dakota?
West Dakota.
Yeah.
Actually, the 26th star. Nobody seems to care that 25 states fell into the ocean.
That's true.
I was star of a popular television sitcom.
And in the next episode, there's a little side thing about Max having demoted Florida or sold it back to somebody or something. Florida ceases to exist and the star comes back off the flag again because we always pay attention to these details.
Hey, there's the voice of the President of the United States.
In the Republican corner, we have the giant animated statue of Abraham Lincoln.
And representing the random violence
Now I'm just mesmerized. I can't say anything.
Yeah.
So this part was one where we're always looking for new types of ways to interact with characters and new kind of situations to be in. And running for president, we thought it would be very fitting and characteristic for Max never to say anything good on his behalf, only to run a mudslinging campaign and somehow run Lincoln into the ground. So this whole sequence involves somehow making Lincoln look bad.
Sacred asset as Americans. Candidate Max, your rebuttal?
I like that we've got the Washington press corps, and it's all Secret Service guys just wearing different hats, which of course we did just to save ourselves work because we couldn't go model a whole bunch of different characters, but it actually turns out to make a pretty good political statement as well.
I'm glad that Sybil finally got into the office in this episode.
She grew legs. Just for this.
This is a good example, and it will force us to do this more in the future, is getting those characters out of there, making those characters feel like they're more alive and getting out and doing other things than just sitting in their chairs or standing behind their counters.
Emergency election are coming in. And it appears that former sitcom star Max has been elected.
We don't make enough use of that particular mode of exposition, having the newspaper spin up to the camera. We did it a few times in this episode.
I wish there could be at least 10 per episode.
You might get some fight back on that.
He took the news much better than expected.
Democracy? I want all my hypnotic slaves.
The music's great here.
Max got robotic Abe Lincoln.
Get it? He makes him slaves, Lincoln.
How profound.
Abe Lincoln must die.
I think this episode has the most use of rack focus too, which made some people throw up. And we're proud of that.
People will vote for anyone these days. Obviously. What's that?
And yet again, the soda poppers managed to work their way in. I mean,
Just can't
the
get rid of
story
those
wrote
guys.
itself. These former stars somehow become governors.
Story wrote itself,
Imagine
but that puzzle, I remember we had a lot of trouble designing. We knew we wanted to start a war between them, but just exactly how we were going to do that. We went through a lot of iterations of very complicated things involving getting all three of them to hate the other ones in various ways.
And then we said, you know
eventually
what,
just boiled down to
let's
this.
just get a guy drunk and call it a day.
What happened to the bottle?
Thanks, Simon Max. You guys are my best friends.
This is one of my favorite surprises that one of the Telltale Tool guys came up with. They actually made a character look like he was drunk. I was pretty surprised by that. We didn't really have much animation support for drunk gestures or anything like that. I think Daniel just ended up slowing down a lot of the animations and making sure that they were off time with the dialogue. And I think we did have one drunk animation, which was the idol, the breathe idol. It makes him look like he's kind of half asleep and stumbling around. But it's just, it really adds a lot to that scene.
Of course you realize this means war!
Uh-oh.
And timing is everything.
Uh-oh.
Oh, the war song.
I love this song.
Who doesn't?
This whole production is a classic example of us not thinking things quite through to the end. We sort of designed it saying, oh yeah, and then you start a war, and then there'll be a big Busby Berkeley kind of musical number, and it'll be really easy to do because they'll all be secret agents, so they'll be really stiff, and we'll just do it, and somebody will spend a day on it, and that'll be that. And then we got back to music and started thinking about how to actually choreograph the thing, and we realized, okay, well, we have to keep it interesting for 2.5 minutes, and boy, this is going to be a lot of work, Dave.
It was quite a lot of work to get this thing done, and just to go. You get this vision in your head that these guys are supposed to be stiff and kind of boring and bad dancers and no personality, but you put that stuff on screen and it just doesn't. It's not funny. It doesn't read. It's pretty hard to do that. But the direction we ended up going in, we budgeted an animator to do some dance animations and some funky gestures, and just kind of threw it all together. And I can't say enough about this funky dance, man. I don't know where this came from.
It's in dance clubs.
Yes,
I'm going to
they're
have to
not
have a
quite-
talk with Jeff, I think.
They're not quite in sync.
But when I was thinking of this whole thing, I hate to admit it, but my big inspiration for this was the movie Little Orphan Annie. Because there's all kinds of crazy dancing and musical numbers in that movie. And my sisters used to watch that thing
I
relentlessly.
think I've seen that 300 times too.
So yeah, about 300
That's not my
times.
inspiration for this game. It's my inspiration for life.
I love Little Annie.
This was the best part, Dave, watching you model how, or kind of imitate how Jeff should animate this.
Yeah, it was a bit of taking a step down, trying to dance like that.
I wish I had a camera
bringing
at
my
bedside.
And then on the
fantastic
couch like
dance
that was his
skills down to that level and trying to dance like a Secret Serviceman in front of the company. That was
It was great.
That was pretty tough.
That was a good day.
I'll do it
There
again.
we go.
This is some major trickery right here. There's no more than 4 or 5 Secret Service agents in the room, and yet we just keep quickly moving them around to make it appear like there's a whole room full of them.
That painting, by the way, back there of the guy in the George Washington wig is actually Steve Purcell.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
took a while. Did everybody get that?
An international press person wrote and asked me if that was Dick Cheney.
Shame.
Kind of.
Gosh, I can kind of see it.
Everything.
So yeah, one of the long dreams for the series would be that Bosco would eventually be proven right that he is being targeted by the government and that you would get to try to shoot
Bosco's
his store
satellite
down.
defense system actually works.
Well played, Bosco. You're safe. But for how long?
Fortunately, you've been funneling him enough cash that he's might be able to mount a defense.
Mr. President?
Don't mind if I do.
I like that they have no qualms about blowing up Bosco's.
Part of this scene, part of this sequence also was to telegraph to the player that there's a beacon that you have to grab in Bosco's store. And we do that by showing certain camera angles on the monitor for each of the targets.
Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah.
My other inspiration for life.
Decisions on parade days.
We broke 2 presidents in one afternoon.
A personal best.
Well, it looks like the country is saved, at least from mass hypnosis.
Now we're gonna go eat some food again.
Let's abuse my powers as leader
Of course.
the world to squeeze the middle class until they're burning their own shoes for heat.
Sounds fun, but I was thinking we could treat ourselves to some chocolate frosted gut bombs and then have a little target practice out of the Smithsonian.
Sam, you're my best friend.
Agent Jackson report. Query step.
Lincoln Space. Yeah.
4-7. Query
I love
Sure,
these.
whose voice this is.
acceptable
Whose voice?
Is Chuckles dead?
Good question, Dave. I wonder. Bye now.